Hello and welcome back to Kirsten's Cove. So today we are going to talk all about the Percy Jackson TV show as a complete whole. I know I've already talked about it a little bit. I dissected episode 1 and 2 and kind of talked about some of the differences between the book. And my first instinct for this video when you're talking about the whole season was to go like chapter by chapter, line by line, see what was different from the book. And then I decided not to. And here's my reason for not completely breaking it down, doing a book analysis of the show pretty much. Rick has talked a lot about this, and I want to respect Rick, I guess, by doing it this way. I want to talk about the show as the show because Rick has talked about why he made the changes that he did. And it feels, I think if Rick wasn't involved, I'd be more like, okay, let's break it down, look at it. But it almost feels disrespectful to him as the person who created the book, created the series. Like, he wrote the TV show as well. Like, he was the one who said, yep, we're making these changes or these changes. Like, the fact that Percy or like the trio didn't fly on an airplane from Santa Monica to New York in the last, like, to get back to deliver the bolt. Like, yeah, that sucks. He explained why he didn't. Like why he didn't do that. It was just like, hey, we have to sacrifice time, so we figured we just have the pearls, have them show up in Montauk instead. It was closer to camp. Perfect. Like, it just is one of those things that like I want to respect the writers, especially now that I've heard some writers talk about shows. Bless Epicons for having writers come, and bless Karina and Marguerite and Julie for breaking things down and giving us reasons why they do things. Because I have such a newfound respect for the writers and why they make decisions. But looking at it from a TV show point, we're gonna do that instead. So from like a whole series point of view, my biggest like I wish that there was more episodes because you are taking it from a book that has, hold on, one moment please. I should have this memorized. 22 chapters. There are 22 chapters in this book and we got 8 episodes. That doesn't seem right. That's like, I don't know. And then there were some episodes where I was like, yeah, this is okay. Then there was episodes like episode 2 and episode 6. So episode 2 is when Percy gets to camp and capture the flag. And then episode 6 is the Lotus Hotel episode. Those two, I wish that they could have been longer, or we could have, especially the Lotus Hotel one. Like, I wish that we could have gotten at least one more episode, so that way we could have dug more into the Lotus Hotel and like everything didn't feel as rushed. I felt like there were some scenes missing with Hermes. Like, yeah, I talked about that on my TikTok channel, and I don't want to say things twice, but there was just thing, and then like the animals and Percy finding out things. There are some stuff in the books that I do wish that we had. It's like Percy having to will himself to be like actually get wet with water. I wish that we could have had that in the show, but we didn't, and I feel like they just didn't have the time to explain it. I also, okay, to be honest, I don't remember if it's in this book or if it's later, but I wish that they would have started introducing it in this book, or like in the season 1 of the show of the water creatures being upset about the status of like their water, that it's dirty and unclean. Especially because they made a point to show that the river was so dirty to the point where they even changed the color of the logo. And so like I wish that we could have gotten a little bit into that, but that's okay. When it comes to characters, I think Percy did like looking at like their whole like character arcs. I think that they did a fantastic job with Percy. He started out so Walker talks about this in the documentary that it's like Percy starts out as a child in episode 1, and by the end of episode 8, he's accepted that he's gonna grow up and that he's more like an adult. And I think that the arc really stays like he really comes into himself. He gets more comfortable and confident. Like we see that with his interaction with Zeus and Kronos of being like, screw you, like you're a mess, screw you, and I'm done playing by these games. And like Oh, one of my favorite lines, especially in episode 8, is "I'm done running from monsters." And yes, but like I think they did a really good job showing how sassy he is, but also like how scared he was, and just how like, you know what, we're gonna do it. We're gonna go. Here we go. I think that was a fantastic. I think they did a fantastic job with that. With Annabeth, I do think that they did a good job. The beginning frustrated me a lot with her because I think that they didn't have to start with her being as timid as she was. In the book, she's not. And the I watched this like the whole show with my friend Kenzie, and she pointed it out to me in this last episode of like wanting to see just how brilliant Annabeth really is. And we saw that she is really smart, but like she is brilliant. And we didn't really get to see that as much. And I think part of it is because they started her off as more timid in the show and like kind of setting herself out so that way she could observe everything, which like is good, but I I don't know. We still got the brilliant, sassy Annabeth that I love, the headstrong, fearless Annabeth that I absolutely adore. But I wish that we could have gotten more of her, and we didn't really. That's my only like about Annabeth. Other than that, I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved that Rick talked about hiring the diversity writers. I think that was fantastic. The way that they had passive racism throughout the whole show, wonderful. I loved it. I think that they did a really good job with Annabeth, and I'm relatively really happy with how her character turned out. Um, and then finding out that Leah Jeffries is so similar to her was see. If you haven't watched the documentary, by the way, you should. I think it really helps you understand and appreciate the show so much more. I think I honestly would have different opinions if I hadn't watched that documentary and watched how much care they put into every step of the way, how much Rick had a say in every step of the way. Like it's really good. You should go watch it. um and then Grover. Oh, Grover really came into himself. I think that they showed I think they did a fantastic job, and Arian did a fantastic job of portraying Grover. They talked about in the show or like in the documentary that he just kind of brought a whole other level to Grover. Like they had made him funny, but Arian, and I'm probably not pronouncing his name right, but the actor like just took it to a whole other level. And I can see that. Like he started as like this timid, afraid to kind of stand up for himself and what he knew that was needed. Like we started with him kind of throwing Percy under the bus and then standing up to Chiron and Mr. D of like, no, Percy needs to know this stuff. But he did it in almost kind of like a timid manner or like an unsure, unconfident manner. And then by the end of the like he absolutely earned his searcher's license by the end of episode 8, like taking charge in episode 3 of like being like, no, like I'm tired of trying to like balance the two of you, like we need to figure out how to work as a trio, like those silly like the silly song, um oh, the satyr's blessings, his pacifist views, like his role in the Lotus Hotel, him standing up to Aries, like the way that they just like he just kind of kept building on his confidence and like learning and growing, and like we just you could absolutely see him just like coming into himself was excellent. I honestly wouldn't want anything different with Grover. Like I don't think that there's a single thing that I would want different with Grover, to be quite honest. um like I can't even think of anything that was in the books. Oh, sorry, there is one slight thing. This is more like Grover and talking about like relationships next, so we'll kind of move into that. I wish we could have gotten more of Grover and Percy. That is something that I wish we could have gotten more of, because knowing in season 2 that they're going to have this special connection, which, sorry if you haven't read the books, but like there's this like special connection that these two are supposed to have, but we didn't necessarily establish their friendship as much as I would have liked. I felt like there was more of a focus on establishing Percabeth than there was establishing Grover and Percy. Percabeth was established great. I love how awkward and teenage it is, and how like Grover notices all of like the changes happening. It was I think it was done really well in that aspect. Um, Moving on to some of like the other like side characters, like I loved the Luke everything. In episode 8, I really enjoyed because I was worried during Capture the Flag when a monster hadn't broken through the barrier or like hadn't been summoned during Capture the Flag. I was worried that we wouldn't, it'd be like too unbelievable that Luke was the person who stole the bolt. And I think that they reflected it really well. Moving that scene that is supposed to be at the beginning of the book to the end as a flashback, I think worked really well. Luke, honestly, I think that, especially the way that they set up this show, if Luke hadn't set Percy up to take the fall for stealing the bolt and hadn't tried to drag him into Tartarus, all of that, Luke hadn't betrayed him, he probably could have gotten Percy on his side. But because Percy went on this quest and he was able to come into himself more and use what he learned from Sally, use what he learned from Annabeth and Grover and everybody, that like that, and then that betrayal from Luke was like the last nail in the coffin, that he was not going to take Luke's side, but he has similar thoughts. He just wants to go about it a different way, I think, which is really intriguing. And I like how much they set up Luke as this friend. And then when Luke kind of like turns into being sinister at the end, he's using language that you often hear from people who have been brainwashed or people who are in cults, which is really interesting in setting up that like maybe Luke isn't as bad as we think he is. So I like what they did there, and I like how they did all of that. They did a great job setting up for a season 2 throughout all of it, of with Grover going to go find Pan, with there being more to Kronos, that Percy living was the key to everything, all of it. Like I really appreciated how much they kind of like thread in this anticipation for another season. The fact that we don't have an announcement yet is really bothersome. We had that hint way back in like what, November, which makes me think that it has been renewed and it just hasn't been announced yet. The set, all of that was wonderfully done. I love the look. I was worried about how they were gonna like be able to go like travel through the US while staying in Canada. But it was done phenomenally. That's another reason to go watch the documentary to see how they did that. They talk a lot about it. Honestly, I also loved the change that Sally taught him ancient Greek, and Sally taught Percy all about Greek gods and kind of was like leading him to this moment. And when you look back on it, that the way that she told Percy at the very beginning that he was a demigod makes so much more sense. I know a lot of people are really confused, like that's really strange, but like it makes so much more sense. And I loved those Sally flashbacks throughout all of it. Like it just made everything more cohesive. I was like, it was just so good. Like the series is a 10 out of 10 in my book. Like I will be rewatching this often. We better get a season 2. The way that they very cleverly wove in so much of making it so many things paralleled from episode 1 to episode 8 or episode 2 to episode 8. Like you had 8 episodes and you're still seeing parallels to the beginning, which was amazing. You're seeing a more cohesive view of it. You're taking a book that was in first person to a show that's in third person, and which is very difficult on its own. Like how do you make up for everybody else's point of view? Like how do you do that? And I love the way that they went about it. Is it the way that I would have imagined? No, probably not. Is it better? 100%. Absolutely, it's better. And so I love it. Some of my favorite lines, this is the last thing that I'm going to say. Some of my favorite lines from the show or favorite moments, starting off with episode 1 of Sally telling Percy, "You are not broken," to Percy at the end saying, "I'm done running from monsters." There was a point in episode 6 where Annabeth says, "It's easy to forget what's important when you're alone." There was honestly just so many like life lessons. Oh, sorry. One more thing before I end this. I saw questions about like who this was for, like what was the audience for this show, and I can see how it could be confusing, but I think that they did a really good job of tying in like while there was differences, that show felt like going home. Like they did a great job of pulling in the nostalgic key moments that the readers were looking for, while also making it exciting and adding new things that the readers could appreciate and be like, "Oh, what's this? I haven't seen this before. What's this? Like Annabeth having regret? What is that?" Like I think that was fantastic. So you have these readers who've been reading since me, what, like third grade? Like it's been 20 years since this book has come out. And so you have people like me or older, but then you also have the younger kids who are third, fifth, sixth, middle school now, who are like either reading it or the show would typically be aimed for. And you have these beautiful life lessons that Disney always has in their shows or tries to at least work into their shows that Percy Jackson already had, and they wove those into. And so I think they did a great job of having a show that is technically probably aimed for like middle high schoolers, but 100% can be enjoyed by anyone. And so I applaud the writers, Rick, for that. Um, and I loved those moments and those like lines that like just really sit and hit you in the heart. Um, there's just so many of them. The moment of Percy asking Poseidon if he dreams and if he dreams about his mom, with the way that they worked water throughout the entire show, of showing that like Poseidon was there as much as he could have been. The whole "you came, you called" moment, and like it was absolutely wonderful. Um, I loved the use of water throughout the entire show, and knowing that they decided to use real water and none of it was faked, and they tried to make it as real as they could. Again, watch the documentary. Okay, I think that's about it. I feel like I have so many thoughts, but I'm going to stop there. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are about season one as a whole and having this kind of new adaptation that was kind of done in a very different way. Probably one of the first times I've seen an author so involved with it, and I love that the way that they did it. Uh, so I'm very curious what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys next week. I'm so excited for next week's video. I hope you keep getting lost in your dreams, and I will see you all later. Bye.